My name is Chloe Anderson. I'm 34. And on the first night inside the lake house I bought after leaving my corporate job, my brother called to tell me it was no longer mine. I had barely unpacked a coffee mug when his voice came through the phone. Casual and certain. "We're moving in tomorrow. Dad approved it. If you don't like it, live somewhere else." For a second, I thought he was joking. Then I heard boxes being taped in the background. He explained that our parents would take the downstairs rooms, he would use the office, and I could keep the little bedroom upstairs until I found somewhere more practical. My hands trembled, but I smiled. That smile surprised even me. Years earlier, I would have argued, cried, or begged them to respect me. This time, I asked one question. "What time are you arriving?" He said 10 o'clock in the morning and laughed as if my surrender had already been signed. The moment the call ended, I opened my laptop, photographed the deed, and made 3 calls. Before sunrise, a locksmith replaced every exterior lock. At 9:45, a moving truck turned onto my road. At 9:50, 2 unformed deputies stepped inside my entryway. And at 10, my family walked toward my front door carrying a document. They believed would force me out. They had no idea my welcome was already waiting for them. Before I tell you what my brother said next and what happened when my parents saw the police, tell me, what time is it where you are? Where are you watching from? And what is the weather like there? Does it match your mood today? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. To understand why I smiled, you need to understand what my family called love. My younger brother Gavin called it sharing when he borrowed my car and returned it empty. My mother Marlene called it concern when she opened my mail. My father Victor called it discipline when he removed my bedroom door because I had locked it during an argument. I was 15 the first time I learned that privacy could be treated like an insult. I came home from school, saw the empty hinges, and found my journal open on the kitchen table. Nobody apologized. They discussed my private thoughts over dinner and told me that secrets were dangerous in a family. For years afterward, whenever I wanted something that belonged only to me, guilt arrived before I could enjoy it. That pattern followed me into adulthood. I became the dependable daughter with the stable salary in Chicago. When Gavin's first business failed, I covered 3 months of his rent. When my parents fell behind on their mortgage, I began sending them money every month. When I finally admitted that my job had hollowed me out, they did not ask whether I was all right. My father asked whether quitting would affect the family budget. I resigned anyway, sold my condo, and bought the lake house entirely in my name with savings I had built over 12 years. I gave them the address only after closing because I wanted one decision they could not revise for me. Now Gavin's text messages glowed on my screen. He had sent them immediately after the call. "Don't make this ugly. Dad handled the paperwork. Once we're established there, you can't just throw us out." That last sentence changed everything. This was not an impulsive visit. They had studied how difficult it could be to remove someone who claimed residency, and they expected my fear of conflict to carry them through the front door. My first call was to Leah Moreno, a real estate attorney I had met during the closing. She was not a magical best friend appearing to fight my battle. She was the professional whose number I had saved for exactly the kind of problem I had hoped never to face. I read Gavin's messages aloud and emailed her the deed, closing statement, insurance policy, and security camera contract. "Do not let them bring a single box inside," she said. "Not one suitcase, not one piece of mail. Send a written notice now stating that they do not have permission to enter or occupy the property." She drafted the language while we were still on the phone. I sent it by text and email to all 3 of them. Gavin replied with a laughing emoji. My father wrote, "You don't understand what you signed." My mother sent 6 paragraphs about sacrifice, loneliness, and how cruel it was for a daughter to hide behind legal language. My second call was to a 24-hour locksmith. My third was to the county sheriff's non-emergency line. I did not demand an arrest or exaggerate a threat. I explained that 3 relatives had announced an intention to enter my home against my written refusal, that one had referenced paperwork I had never signed, and that they were arriving with a moving truck at a specific time. The dispatcher told me to keep the doors locked, preserve every message, and call again if they appeared. A deputy later phoned, reviewed the situation, and said a patrol unit could be nearby because the texts showed a planned confrontation. That was how the police became part of my welcome, not through luck, but through documentation. While the locksmith worked, I photographed every room and every valuable item. I activated the doorbell camera, the driveway camera, and the audio warning on the side entrance. I placed copies of the deed and my written refusal in a folder beside the door. Leah drove out before dawn with a portable printer, a thermos, and a look that told me she understood the difference between revenge and preparation. At 6:30, I found the detail that proved my family had begun the plan before calling me. Inside my mailbox was a change of address confirmation addressed to Gavin Anderson. The effective date was 3 days earlier. Beneath it sat an envelope from a payment processing company addressed to Anderson Lake Retreats LLC at my house. I had never heard of that company. Leah photographed both envelopes without opening them. Then she searched the public business registry. Gavin had formed the company 6 weeks before I closed on the lake house. My address had been added as its principal office the afternoon after I received my keys. I stared at the filing until the words blurred. They were not merely planning to live with me. My brother had attached a business to my home before he had even told me he was coming. At 8:15, Leah found an online advertisement using a photograph from my real estate listing. The headline read, "Private Lakefront Escape, now accepting summer reservations." The calendar showed 4 weekends already unavailable. My family had not packed for a reunion. They had packed for a takeover. At 9:45, the moving truck rolled into the driveway exactly as Gavin had promised. A dark sedan followed it. I watched through the camera monitor while Leah stood beside the kitchen island and deputies Ruiz and Keene waited near the entryway. They had arrived after I called to report that the truck was approaching. Both officers had already seen the messages, my deed, and the notice denying entry. They did not promise to solve a family dispute for me. They said they would prevent a breach of the peace and document whatever happened next. Gavin climbed out first, wearing sunglasses and carrying a ring of keys that did not belong to him. My mother, Marlene, stepped from the passenger side of the sedan with a houseplant in her arms. My father, Victor, emerged from the driver's side holding a brown document envelope. Behind them, 2 movers opened the truck and waited for instructions. I stayed inside until Gavin tried his key. It scraped against the new lock twice. He looked at it, tried again, and then struck the door with the sight of his fist. "Chloe," he shouted, "open up! The movers are charging by the hour." I opened the door only as far as the security latch allowed. "You were told not to come." Marlene lifted the plant as if it were a peace offering. "We brought you something for the porch. Let us in before the neighbors start staring. The neighbors are not the problem." Victor stepped forward. "Enough theater. Open the door." I released the latch and opened it fully. The 2 deputies became visible behind me. Gavin's mouth fell open. My mother lowered the plant. My father did not move, but the muscles along his jaw tightened. "What is this?" Gavin asked. "The welcome you earned," I said. Deputy Ruiz spoke before anyone could rush the threshold. She explained that I was the recorded owner, that I had withdrawn permission for them to enter, and that any attempt to force their way inside could result in arrest. Her tone stayed calm. That calmness made my family's outrage look even louder. Marlene turned to me. "You called police on your own parents. I called because you announced that you were taking possession of my home after I told you no. We are not taking anything. She said we are keeping you from making another reckless decision." Gavin pointed toward the lake. "You quit your job, moved across the country, and bought a place too big for one person. We're trying to make it useful." There it was. Not mine. Useful. Victor opened the brown envelope and removed a 6-page document. "This is a residential occupancy agreement." He said, "Chloe granted us the right to live here for 5 years, $1 per year. Family consideration." Leah stepped into the doorway. "May I see it?" My father recognized her name from the notice. "This is none of your business. It became my business when my client received a document bearing a signature she says she did not make." He held the papers toward Deputy Keene instead. The deputy looked through them without offering an opinion. I saw my name at the bottom of the last page. The signature resembled mine in the way a child's drawing resembles a photograph. The shape was familiar, but nothing moved naturally. "When did I sign that?" I asked. Victor did not look at me. "Thanksgiving where?" "At our house." I spent Thanksgiving in Montreal with my former co-workers. My passport stamps, airline receipts, hotel records, and photographs can prove it. Marlene's eyes flicked toward him. Gavin took off his sunglasses. Victor recovered quickly. Then it was Christmas. The date may have been entered later. Leah pointed to the notary block. This stamp belongs to a notary whose commission expired last year. The supposed notarization date is 4 months after expiration. That's a technical issue. Victor snapped. No, I said a technical issue is a missing page number. This is my forged signature. The movers exchanged a glance. One of them closed the truck door halfway. Gavin stepped closer to me, stopping when Deputy Ruiz raised one hand. You know, we have nowhere else ready. Mom and Dad already gave notice on their place. I ended my lease. You can't humiliate us like this over paperwork. Your housing decisions were made after I said no. You didn't say no until last night. I never said yes. Marlene's voice softened into the tone she had used throughout my childhood whenever she wanted obedience to feel like compassion. Chloe, please. Your father has been under enormous pressure. Gavin's business needs a stable base. We thought once we were together, you would understand. I looked at the truck. Through the gap in the door, I could see labeled boxes. Master bedroom, office, kitchen. They had assigned rooms inside my home without ever standing in them. Deputy Keene asked Victor where the original agreement was. Victor said the copy was sufficient. The deputy asked for the notary's contact information. Victor said he did not have it. Each answer reduced his authority until all that remained was volume. Then Gavin made the mistake that exposed the rest. Even if she tears that up, our mail already comes here. He said, the utilities are being transferred. We've established residency. Leah turned toward me, but I was already reaching for the second folder. Thank you, I told him. I needed you to say that in front of witnesses. I handed Deputy Ruiz the business filing, the change of address notice, and an identity monitoring alert that had arrived on my phone 19 minutes earlier. Someone had applied for an $85,000 business credit line using my address and listing my property as an operating asset. The applicant was Anderson Lake Retreats, LLC. The guarantor field contained my name. For the first time that morning, Gavin stopped performing confidence. He stared at the alert on my phone, then at our father. Victor's face changed too, not into guilt, but calculation. I recognized it because I had watched him search for leverage in every disagreement I had ever tried to win. That application was preliminary, Gavin said. No money was taken. You used my name as guarantor. It was going to help all of us. How does $85,000 of debt help me? Marlene placed the houseplant on the driveway. Don't discuss private finances in front of strangers, Deputy Ruiz answered before I could. They stopped being entirely private when a possible fraudulent application was reported. Victor pointed at Leah. She is filling Chloe's head with legal nonsense. We have contributed to this family for decades. This house exists because of us. I almost laughed. Instead, I opened the folder Leah had prepared. Inside were 12 years of bank records summarized on one page. I had sent my parents more than $74,000 since turning 26. I had paid Gavin's rent, car insurance, tax bill, and 2 failed business invoices. The lake house had been purchased from the sale of my condo and my own savings. My parents had contributed nothing. I have the closing records, I said. I have the source of every dollar. What exactly do you believe belongs to you? Victor looked at the summary but did not take it. Money is not the only contribution parents make. You're right. You also taught me what happens when I don't protect my boundaries. The empty hinges of my childhood bedroom flashed through my mind. I remembered standing in the hallway while my father carried the door into the garage. I remembered my mother saying I could earn it back by becoming trustworthy. At 15, I had believed privacy was a reward controlled by someone stronger. At 34, I finally understood that a boundary meant nothing if I surrendered it whenever someone called me selfish. Gavin stepped away from the deputies and lowered his voice. Look, I listed the property because I needed proof of inventory for the lender. Once the credit line came through, I would have paid you. Paid me for what? For using the house. You advertised dates without my permission. They're refundable. How much did you collect? He glanced at Victor. How much, Gavin? About $26,000. The number landed harder than I expected. 4 groups of strangers had paid to sleep in my home. My brother had accepted their money before asking whether he could cross my threshold. Leah asked whether the deposits remained in the company account. Gavin's silence answered first. Some went to operations. He admitted advertising the truck storage catching up on bills. Deputy Keene began writing. Marlene moved toward me, then stopped outside the doorway. Your brother made mistakes because he was desperate. Are you really going to destroy him when you could solve this with one signature? That question captured my entire role in the family. Their emergencies became my obligations. My resistance became the harm. How many times can someone rescue the same people before rescue becomes permission? I'm not destroying him, I said. I'm refusing to let him use me to hide what he already did. Victor shoved the forged agreement back into its envelope. We are done explaining ourselves. Movers, start unloading. Neither mover moved. The older one folded his arms. Sir, we were hired to deliver to a lawful occupant. The owner says, no, and police are present. Victor walked toward the truck anyway. Deputy Keene stepped between him and the ramp. Do not remove property from that vehicle onto this land. My father turned so quickly that the envelope struck the deputy's chest. Keene caught Victor's wrist, redirected his arm, and ordered him to step back. My mother screamed his name. Gavin raised both hands. I remained inside the doorway, forcing myself not to retreat. Victor was not arrested. Then the deputy released him after he complied, but the warning was clear and recorded. One more attempt to enter, unload, threaten, or touch anyone would end differently. I brought out 4 white envelopes. The first contained a formal no trespass notice for each of them. The second contained copies of the identity theft report and the disputed credit inquiry. The third contained a demand that Gavin preserve every booking record, deposit, advertisement, and communication connected to my property. The fourth was personal. What's that? Marlene asked. The end of my financial support. I had canceled the automatic monthly transfer that helped cover my parents' mortgage. I had removed Gavin from the phone plan and insurance policy I had continued paying after his business collapsed. I had also revoked his access to the emergency credit card he had promised never to use again. You would leave us with nothing? She whispered. No, I'm leaving you with your own income, your own choices, and your own consequences. Gavin tore his notice in half. Deputy Ruiz calmly handed him another copy. Victor stared at me with a contempt so familiar it no longer frightened me. You think this is victory? By next week, everyone will know what kind of daughter you are. I met his eyes. Good. Then I won't have to explain why you're never coming inside. The movers secured the truck. The deputies ordered my family to leave the property. As the sedan reversed, Marlene's plant remained on the driveway beside the shredded notice. I thought that was the end of their plan. Then my phone began vibrating with calls from relatives who believed I had stolen my parents' retirement home. By noon, I had 17 missed calls. My aunt accused me of abandoning elderly parents. A cousin asked why I had invited the family to Florida, only to stage a police ambush. Someone else wrote that money had changed me. I answered none of them individually. The version they knew had been prepared long before the moving truck arrived. Leah advised me to say nothing publicly while the fraud reports were active. Privately, however, I was allowed to correct false statements. I created one email addressed to the relatives who had contacted me. I attached the deed, the written notice I had sent before my family left home. The fake occupancy agreement, the business registration, and screenshots of Gavin saying that once they established residency, I could not remove them easily. I removed account numbers and other private data. My message contained 6 sentences. I did not invite anyone to move into my house. I did not sign the attached agreement. My address and name were used without permission for a rental business and credit application. Snorts. Deposits were accepted from guests for access to my property. I am cooperating with the appropriate institutions. Please do not contact me to pressure me into accepting conduct you would not accept in your own home. Then I pressed send. The first response came from my Aunt Denise. She did not apologize. She asked me to call immediately. When I did, her voice sounded smaller than usual. Your father told me you were opening a family resort. He said you wanted us to invest. How much did you give him? $2,000. The money was supposed to renovate my dock, furnish guest rooms, and install a hot tub. None of those projects existed. Victor had sent her a presentation bearing my name beneath the title managing partner. The presentation included photographs stolen from the home listing and a projected annual revenue of $24,000. Denise forwarded everything to Leah. Within an hour, 2 other relatives admitted they had been approached. One had refused. The other had transferred $5,000 to Gavin's company for a founding membership. My parents had not merely lied to gain sympathy after the confrontation. They had used the fantasy of my lake house to raise money before I even moved in. I opened the rental advertisement again. New reviews had appeared, not from guests, but from accounts praising our attentive family hosts. The listing described Victor as property manager, Marlene as hospitality director, and Gavin as founder. I was described as a silent investor who had returned to the city. They had written me out of my own home. The platform removed the listing after Leah submitted the deed and police incident number. The payment processor froze Gavin's account, pending proof that he had authority to rent the property. The lender suspended the credit application. I filed an identity theft report and a dispute with each credit bureau. Denise reported the investment solicitation through her bank. Gavin called from a number I did not recognize. "You need to tell the platform this was a misunderstanding. He said they're holding all the money. The guests need refunds. I can refund them after the summer bookings. You no longer have summer bookings. Then where am I supposed to get $26,000? The old version of me would have begun calculating. She would have opened a spreadsheet, moved savings, and tried to purchase peace from people who treated peace as weakness. "I don't know," I said. He went silent. "You always know. Not anymore." His voice sharpened. "Dad said that house was our last chance." "Your last chance to do what?" "Live there or sell access to it. We needed both. Mom and Dad are losing their house. I'm already being sued by my former partner. The lake place could have fixed everything." "For you? For the family?" I looked through the glass door at the driveway where the abandoned plant still sat. A family solution does not require forging one member's signature. He began insulting Leah, the deputies, my career, and finally me. I ended the call without defending any of them. A boundary did not need a closing argument. That evening, my security camera alerted me to motion near the side gate. Victor stood outside holding bolt cutters. I spoke through the camera. "You are trespassing. Leave now." He looked directly at the lens. "Withdraw the reports or I'll prove the house was bought with family money." A patrol car entered the road before he reached the chain. Victor dropped the cutters, but the camera had already captured them in his hand. The deputies issued a trespass citation and removed him from the property. 10 minutes later, Leah called. "Your father just emailed me a bank record," she said. "He claims a $4,000 transfer proves he funded your down payment." I knew exactly which transfer he meant. I also knew the document he sent could not be genuine because the original transfer had gone in the opposite direction. 9 years earlier, Victor had asked me for $4,000 to keep his contracting company alive. He called it a bridge loan and promised repayment within 6 months. It took him almost 7 years. The transfer he now presented as his contribution to my house was the final repayment installment, combined with interest and money he had withheld from an earlier insurance settlement that belonged to me. I still had the signed promissory note, the original bank statements, and an email from him that said, "Final payment. Debt between us settled." The image he sent Leah had been altered. The transaction description had been replaced with family gift for home purchase, and the direction of transfer had been cropped away. He apparently believed a screenshot would carry the authority of a bank record. Leah answered with a preservation notice and requested that all future communication go through counsel. My bank supplied a certified statement. Its fraud department confirmed that no $4,000 payment from Victor had funded my purchase. The metadata from the file he emailed showed it had been edited the same afternoon he appeared at my gate. 3 weeks later, I sat in a county courtroom seeking an injunction that would keep all 3 of them away from the property. I testified only to what I had seen, heard, received, and documented. I did not speculate about their motives. The doorbell footage showed Gavin trying his key. The driveway footage showed the truck, the forged agreement, and Victor ordering the movers to unload after being told not to. The side gate footage showed the bolt cutters. The messages showed their plan to establish residency. The business records showed my address used without permission. Victor represented himself at first. He spoke as if volume could transform entitlement into ownership. He said parents possessed an unwritten interest in anything their children achieved. He said I was emotionally unstable after quitting my job. He said Leah had manipulated me. When the judge asked for evidence of ownership, permission, or investment, he returned to the altered bank image. Leah placed the certified record beside it. The courtroom became quiet. The judge granted the injunction. She ordered my family to remain away from the house and prohibited them from using my name, image, address, or property in any business solicitation. She referred the conflicting documents and signature allegations to investigators already reviewing my complaint. It was not a dramatic television verdict. No gavel crashed. What mattered was simpler. For the first time, an authority figure heard my father say that family gave him rights over me and answered, no. Outside the courtroom, Marlene waited near the elevators. She had hired a separate counsel and claimed she had not understood the business plan. I believed she had not created the documents. I also remembered her standing in my driveway, asking me to solve the fraud with one signature. "Your father may face charges," she said. "Gavin could lose everything. They made those risks before I reported them. You could tell investigators you no longer feel harmed. That would be a lie." She wiped her eyes. "What happened to the daughter who kept us together? She nearly disappeared." Marlene reached for my hand. I stepped back. Her face hardened for half a second before sadness returned. That brief change told me more than the tears. The financial consequences arrived before the criminal case concluded. Gavin's payment processor refunded what remained in his account, then pursued him for the shortage. The guests filed chargebacks for the rest. His former partner added the false property listing to an existing civil suit. The state dissolved his company after required filings and fees went unpaid. Denise recovered part of her investment through a bank reversal and sued for the balance. My parents' mortgage problem was real, but it was not sudden. They had stopped making full payments 4 months earlier because Victor expected my house to become their free residence and business asset. Without my monthly transfer, the lender resumed foreclosure proceedings. They sold before the auction and moved into a small rental apartment. It was not homelessness. It was the life their income could support without mine. Gavin sent one final proposal through Leah. He would admit the lease was false if I paid the deposit refunds and asked Denise to withdraw her claim. I rejected it. Would protecting him from consequences have been mercy? Or would it simply have trained him to use me again? 2 months later, Victor accepted responsibility in a negotiated criminal resolution involving the forged instrument and the altered financial record. He received probation, community service, restitution obligations, and a prohibition against contacting me. Gavin, snorts, entered a civil settlement requiring him to repay the remaining guest deposits and family investments. Marlene was not charged, but the injunction remained. They did not go to prison. They lost something they valued more: access to my money, my property, my credibility, and my silence. 6 months after the moving truck left, I turned the room Gavin had claimed as his office into a consulting studio. I began working with small companies that needed financial systems without corporate cruelty. I earned less than I had in Chicago, slept better, and never again woke to a message asking me to rescue a crisis I had not created. The lake house changed because I changed. I did not fill it with relatives to prove I was generous. I invited people who knocked, waited, and accepted no without punishment. Denise visited after her case settled, but she stayed at a nearby hotel because I was not ready for overnight family guests. She did not argue. That simple respect felt more healing than any speech. Marlene mailed letters every few weeks. The first blamed stress. The second blamed Victor. The third finally contained a sentence I had waited most of my life to hear. "I helped teach you that love required surrender, and I was wrong." I did not answer immediately. An apology could begin repair, but it did not erase risk. I told her through Leah that I might agree to a supervised meeting in a public place after the injunction expired. I promised nothing beyond that. Gavin sent no apology. He posted vague messages about betrayal and greedy relatives until former customers replied with screenshots of canceled reservations. He eventually deleted his accounts. I did not celebrate his humiliation, but I did not protect him from accurate information either. Victor never contacted me directly. His probation terms prevented it. Through another relative, I heard that he still described the house as something stolen from him, that no longer disturbed me. A person could misunderstand my boundary and still be required to obey it. After the legal matters ended, I recorded the story from my studio. I did not publish private addresses, financial numbers, or footage of anyone being restrained. I shared enough to explain how entitlement grows when it is repeatedly rewarded and how preparation can be stronger than rage. Thousands of viewers argued about whether families should forgive anything. Others said they had never realized that guilt could function like a key handed to people who had no right to enter. One evening, a package arrived without a return address. Inside was the brass doorknob from my childhood bedroom, the door Victor had removed when I was 15. Marlene had wrapped it in an old photograph of me standing beside the empty frame. There was one note: "You should always have had a door." I sat with it for a long time. Then I placed the doorknob on a shelf, not as an invitation and not as proof that everything was healed. It was evidence that I had finally stopped waiting for my family to validate what I already knew. The next morning, I replaced the abandoned plant on the driveway with a small sign near the porch: "Private home. Entry by invitation only." That afternoon, I received Clear's throat, an alert from the camera. A delivery driver stood outside with a box and waited. After ringing the bell, I opened the door because I chose to. That choice was the real revenge. Not the frozen bank account, not the failed company, not the court order or the smaller apartment. My victory was that nobody could enter my life by announcing they belonged there. Nobody could spend my money and call it sacrifice. Nobody could remove my door and demand gratitude for the open space. People often ask whether I forgive my family. My answer is that forgiveness and access are not the same thing. I can release the anger without returning the key. I locked the door that night, turned on music, and watched the last light disappear across the water. Then I smiled. The same smile that had appeared when Gavin said, "If you don't like it, live somewhere else." He had been right about one thing. Someone needed to live somewhere else. It just was not me.